No. I
Well,
no.
hold it just a minute. Let's get the YouTube audience on first,
Sure.
so that they could also hear. They're coming slowly. They are on. You are on. So this evening, our guest of honor is Nick Chan, who has been following us for quite some time. And Nick lives in Singapore. And so, why don't you just start that again, Nick? Um, you're near 40 now?
Oh yeah, I'm turning 40 soon. I was born and raised here. I've been here the whole time. Um, like Singapore is I don't know. I assume you guys kind of know what
Well,
Singapore is.
I came to Singapore the first time when maybe before you were born, or yeah, because I came in 1979 the first time to Singapore, and you were born in 1980.
Yes, I was.
Okay,
Yes, I was.
so
1980.
I managed to get to Singapore by 1979, and I've been there about 25 times since then. So
Yeah, you mentioned a lot of times to India also, right?
right, India 44 times.
Yeah.
Actually,
Wow.
46, but 44 that counted.
Yeah. Wow. Um, I I mean um I guess I had kind of a normal childhood. Um,
What did your father do and your mother? Were they
my
employed?
uh okay, here's the thing about me. Like I I had a normal childhood, but I'm able to make seemingly contradictory statements about my biography, such as um, I can say that like my mom left when I was 2, so I basically have not had a mother. My dad was had substance abuse problems, and he was hardly there. So I think my point is I can say statements that would match any kind of broken home tragedy kind of thing. But yet at the same time, I can say that I had a privileged childhood, and up until I was like around 20 years old, a typical weekend would be going on a yacht around the islands in Singapore. I stayed in a big bungalow with many trees and a small fish pond, blah, 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 until I was 8. Um, and yeah, so I think the important point that I was trying to get across was that there is this fluidity to um, the perception of my biography, depending on how like I want to how I choose to remember it actually. And I mean, I'm totally open for. I mean, that's normal, of course, but and I'm totally open and um, I'm totally open and open to like telling my story. However, ever since um, ever since September the 30th last year, um, the way that I perceive my life and the world has changed dramatically, and I don't really have an interest in the biographical sense anymore. And I know this is going to sound strange, but um, I I feel like I am in this permanent mystical state, and I don't mean like mystical, like I don't mean it in a pomp kind of way or to play it up. In fact, I don't like to use that word because people will tend to, you know, see or think of it a certain way. But I don't know how else to describe it. It's like quite boundaryless. So in talking about my story, um, I don't really think of it in terms of linear progression of biographical events, which is kind of like, you know, the usual way we tell it. But I think of key moments that were significant, because, not just because they were like meaningful or, yeah, not just because, in fact, that's the part that is not so interesting to me. It's more like they were significant because they revealed something about the structure of my psyche.
Well, that's
So,
exactly what Dr. Jung thought. But what happened? The burning question is, what happened on September 30th?
okay, this is like a bit tongue in cheek, but I describe it as a head injury, but I just had a very intense, intense experience. And after that, it started to, I mean, it was literally, I, I pinned it down to like a particular day. And after that, um, everything was different. And it's not just I mean, it's one thing if everything was different in terms of, you know, my perception. And, you know, like I've had experiences before, but this seeped into the outside world and it didn't abate, and it's still like that. And basically, like, it's almost like I live in a permanent state of synchronicity. And I mean, I'm not kidding. And I've got like I've got yeah, I mean, I don't want to say evidence, but just very strange things. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, my point of that was, since then I've been writing I've been writing a lot since about um October. And so I thought that, you know, today I might, instead of sharing in that usual way of, you know, I grew up in this place, I met this girl, I did all this, and I thought I might read some of the stuff that I wrote. And I mean, if we wanted to, we could discuss some of it, because um, it's kind of I mean, I find it interesting, and you know, it could like trigger discussion or stuff like that.
Okay.
I mean, it's still about me, you know, but I think what I was
Yes,
trying to say.
sounds interesting. Did anything specific occur on September 30th that triggered this moment? I mean, all of us have had numinous experiences here. Everybody that's here has had numinous experiences, but
Of course, that, yeah, I know, and I mean, I've always been into like um spiritual stuff, occult stuff. I've dabbled, you know, when I was younger. I wouldn't say
mhm,
dabbled, actually. I wouldn't say dabbled. Yeah, I it was tied in with my art, so it was more like a path. So I mean, I've done the whole 9 yards, whether psychedelics, stuff like that. So I'm pretty familiar with that territory. But this was like is something else. And it's just it's strange. And um, I think, and one more thing I want to add is that I'm actually not into epiphanies, meaning that the more epiphanic something feels, the more it actually raises my eyebrow, and, you know, tells me to like take a step back, kind of thing.
mhm.
Because it's not that I don't believe in epiphanies, but um, it's what happens after. You see, epiphanies to me, it just means that um, something intense has been activated, and then yes, you know, it feels like wow, and you get a momentary glimpse into that thing. But I think the bigger thing is getting into that state, but it's not, it's simultaneously transcending but also moving downwards.
Mm-hmm.
Moving
And
downwards
a
meaning,
broader consciousness, would you say?
yes. And I feel that too often there's this it's very biased towards the transcendentalist idea, that we're going higher and higher and
Oh, yeah.
higher states of consciousness. But and I mean I've had that, right? But what I realize is that higher, it's also a simultaneous realization of something that has been and is always there. So it's, you know what I mean? It's you're not ascending. I mean, to ascend is also to simultaneously descend. And where do you really transcend to anyway? That's why I feel. So it's that dual thing between transcendence and immanence, that the divine is always here. Yeah. So so what I was telling, after September 30th, then my memory changed. And what I mean by changed is I found myself able to remember everything about my life. And I really mean everything. And okay, I got to make a distinction here. Like I I'm not like I'm not a calendar or card counter. It's not that kind of memory. But at the same time, it can get as intense as that. That means yeah, and I can even make it chronological. And so what I mean by my memory change is that my memory has become like this other space that I move around in. And it's it has to do with the body as well. So it's not just a mental thing. It's not just a recollection of images and events. I feel it's more like I've liberated the energy from whatever events I've been through. So there's a fluidity of movement in space and time, and there's a malleability of identity, and it also affects how things unfold. Yeah. So maybe I could I don't know. Do you guys have anything to say or ask? I don't know. Am I
Yeah,
being quite
I have a question.
sure, Sandy?
So I'm gonna get a little technical and stop me if I'm okay.
Please do. I mean, I would
Okay.
actually prefer that.
Okay. So what type of head injury was it? What happened before, during, and after?
Okay, head injury is just a term. I didn't actually have any injury.
Oh,
Yes, there was no concussion. There was no injury like that. So okay. So I mean, if I move, it is just a label. Because I don't want to say like I had a religious experience, although actually, I mean, it pretty much is that. So I'm saying head injury to play it
okay.
down.
So,
But to answer your question, you see, if I when I trace back like, okay, what was happening before that? Okay, I was like, I had got out of a relationship, and and my emotional state wasn't that rosy, stuff like that. And that's fine. Not see as an explanation, but it's fine to like, okay, identify that. But the thing is that it's persisted. I'm over the relationship. I'm friends with my ex. My life is very normal, but I feel completely different. And the thing is, it's not just in my head. You see, it's like it's out there in the real world as well. And when I say out there in the real world as well, I mean like I cannot leave my house without seeing like a string of vehicles that have repeating numbers. And it's not that I'm noticing them, because I actually make sure that, I'm just going about my usual routine, which is just going to the supermarket and, taking a walk. And it's really crazy. And so one thing that has definitely shifted for me is that when I use the word projection now, it's not I don't use it in the, or rather when I hear the word projection, it's not, to me it's not like about, it's a bit more alchemical, where projection also creates. Yeah, sorry Sandy, go on.
Yeah. So okay, so there was a breakup.
There was a breakup. Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. I have one other question. How old were you again when your mother died?
My mom didn't die. She's she's alive and living in Louisiana. I was
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah, she's living in Louisiana now with her husband, and I was 2 when she left.
Oh, you were 2 when she left.
Yep.
So you did you have any language when you were 2?
My earliest memory is 3, and I don't think I had language. And when I say I recall, right? Okay, so here's the thing. I can recall really until I was 3, but when it's all chronological, but when it goes beyond 4 and like maybe 4 and earlier, it begins to become diffuse in the sense like it's like hanging images, and I don't think I had language then.
Yeah. Okay. And was there a grandmother, or like who was the who was the female figure around you after 2? That's my last question.
The grandmother, Taoija. Yes, there was a grandmother on my dad's side. She had she raised me. She raised me during I mean, you can say she raised me, but I realized that I kind of like was always on my own meaning that I kind of can't be contained, like I'm kind of precocious, and I found out quite a bit later in life that my grandmother on my mom's side, my mom's a Thai, was like, I found out that my grandma was like, and my lineage on that side of the family, my grandma was a shaman, and quite a apparently powerful one, and I was actually conceived in northern Thailand, and I did go back there when I was 2, although I don't have recollection of that, but there are photos. And the only time I went back was in 2017, and there was also this like big psychic, I won't say psychic eruption, but it was, it was a very significant thing going there after more than 35 years. And when I went there, it was, I mean, words can't describe it, but what was really weird for me was like realizing this whole dimension of my maternal side, and seeing how my life had played out not in terms of events, but played out in terms of like the things like I was into, my inclinations, where it came from, because I had no contact with that side of the family at all, you see. So it was quite shocking, and I think the biggest shock for me was when I was talking to my my aunt, and my aunt meaning my mom's sister, my Thai aunt, and I was talking to her after a day of like going around temples, and my aunt is an intuitive, and she's not a medium, but you could say that if she wanted to be, she could. So I saw her getting like, you know, possessed at the temple and all that kind of stuff, right? So I was speaking to her about my grandma, and um, the real shocking part was when she told me that my grandma had okay, sorry, I'm sounding a bit broken up, right? But
That's right.
okay, earlier in the day, okay, so basically it was like there was some big Buddhist event, and earlier in the day I had been to like a temple. I'd been to this genie hut, which was like some spirit thing and all, and I'd seen my aunt get possessed in all these places. So I'm very curious about such stuff, and later in the day I just wanted to ask my aunt about, you know, the different spirits that you know she was possessed by, and just asking her about that, and so she told me about each one, and each one kind of, you know, like, oh, okay, made sense. And um not that I was familiar with it, it was the first time I was hearing, but I could, you know, feel the link to something in the culture, or another culture or what. And I had also seen my grandma's I guess I will call it an altar, but it was the entire second floor of this big house. I'd seen the altar, and there were all these different figures, and while I didn't recognize all of them, I could tell that they were Thai. But the big shock was when my auntie told me that the biggest spirit that she had engaged that day was actually my grandma's familiar, and it came from the Amazon.
Mm.
So that was a shock, because when I look back on at the photos of, you know, like my grandma's altar, right, there is no Amazon stuff. There's stuff which I can see, okay, that's Thai, that's like kind of it's Thai, but there was no Amazon stuff. And there was early in the day during lunch, there was this small insect that was on my sister's arm. Then I said, hey, look at that. And then when my sister saw it, she said, hey, that's grandma's favorite insect. And it was a small praying mantis. So that's still something that I haven't uncovered yet. And it's that auntie stays in LA, and the English isn't so good. So it was like kind of a bit broken at parts, right? But yeah, so that was very interesting for me, actually, and that was a big, yeah, it was beyond interesting. It was like, I mean, it's one thing to like for me to know that, you know, I've always been into like spiritual stuff, you know, native cultures, shamanism, whatever, right? And go there and find out my grandma was a shaman and all that. But then to be told that her familiar, which was the big daddy spirit of that, you know, was in the family lineage, was from the Amazon, that's just so strange, don't you think? This is northern Thailand, you know, the other side of the world.
So your maternal grandparents were Thai, is that?
Yes.
So your mother grew up in northern Thailand. Is that near Chiang Mai or where?
It's Chayapum, so it's further up than Chiang Mai, I think. Yeah. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So oh man.
That's very interesting.
I mean, that's part of
do you think that something's happening with you, that you're like genetically developing some shamanistic capacities?
I actually know I have it. But I mean, I don't like to say things like that because I think when it, um, I don't think we should use the word shamanistic too loosely. In the sense that I think a shaman is able to cure. Okay, I think it's just that, meaning that um, like if we say shaman, I think, okay, for me, I think a shaman, okay, shamanistic ability, yes, but I think when we say the word, for me, when the word shaman is used, it has, for someone to really be a shaman, to me means that this person occupies a certain role within the community. So it's not about the person alone. That means there has to be a certain recognition from a community, and the role is you know, it's one of healing and being a pipeline to the collective unconscious. So I think when I say I don't use it that lightly, it's just that I feel that you can have shamanistic ability but not be a shaman, because a shaman is about I feel it's about, you know, being within a community and serving a function for the community and being able to do that for people.
Yes, but you can acquire that after your capabilities become sort of honed.
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of always known that like I've had yeah, that kind of connection to things and people. And yeah.
So, Nick, have you spent time with your mother, or?
I mean, I only first met her again when I was 27.
27.
Yeah, the time before that, I was 2.
Yeah.
So
she came back to Singapore, or you came to the States?
She came to Singapore once, and then the next time after that, I met the whole family. This was 2 years after that, so I was 29. In where is that? In Thailand, in Phuket.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you know, slowly, kind of build a relationship through the years. Yeah.
I wonder if you wanna read what you wanted to read. I'm quite waiting for that.
Yes.
Okay, actually, yeah. Why not? Because yeah, why not? But this might sound quite inane. Yeah,
You shouldn't be worried about how it will sound like. We'll decide and we'll let you know. Sure.
Okay, so this post is about, it's about lucid dreaming, and I mean, I've had all sorts of dreams, but this is like I said, I'm just keeping the significant ones, because actually I'm not really interested in content, like as in you know, the personal biography. Okay, I was 18 when I first managed to lucid dream, and looking back, my first successful lucid dream was very telling, though not in any way I expected or understood at the time. Following techniques gleaned from Stephen LaBerge, I carried in my shirt pocket a small printed card with 5 points. They all revolved around checking if I was dreaming, and doing so thoroughly, such as really look around, pinch yourself until pain, feel the pain as much as you can, focus on a mundane object. Every half hour I would do it. It took a bit of discipline, but after 2.5 months, I succeeded. So the dream was this. I found myself lying in my bed. It was a normal scene. I was under my blanket and could see my feet as the blanket was pulled up too much. There was a bedside table with a round old school China alarm clock. Something didn't feel right, though not in any disturbing way. It was something about the air, not visual, but a feeling. It hit me that I was dreaming. I looked around and felt intense excitement and blurted out, "Fucking hell, I'm dreaming." I got so excited that I woke up in my bed. I was in the same position. I realized what happened and I felt like I wasted a precious chance. I lay down thinking about it, trying to recall whatever I could. When I felt that strange same thing about the air, I realized I was still dreaming. I blurted out, "Fucking hell, I'm still dreaming." This time it was too much. The excitement was too much. And I woke up again in the same position in my bed and knew I was really awake this time. This was my first lucid dream, or two. I don't dwell on it, but I do feel it's unusual to have a lucid dream within a lucid dream as a first experience. After that, it became easier, though never really on demand, sometimes up to twice a week. At first, I'd go around the environments, which were never really that awesome or fantastic, just buildings or regular looking parks mostly. Dreaming attention was something I could feel dwindling as soon as the initial rush of lucidity wore off and the dream stabilized. I learned how to fly. The trick was not to think of jumping or anything three-dimensional, but to just will it with my view. For some reason, closing my eyes and spinning was something that helped recharge dreaming attention, though in a limited way that only worked 3 times at the most. It didn't take me long to realize I was wasting my time in the dreamscape. The point wasn't to explore or even find interesting stuff or things to do. The point was to familiarize my awareness with the fact that it was dreaming. So from then on, every time I became lucid, I had a drill. I would immediately go to the nearest object, whatever it was, a tree, grass, or if there wasn't anything, but the sky looked great, I would stare at it. What I was trying to do was to zero in my senses and how they felt. And it's not that they felt out of the ordinary. Everything felt normal, but it was more about bringing awareness to how real my senses felt, how real objects felt, while in the state of knowing it was all a dream. The effect it had on waking awareness was that I began to notice the dreamlike quality of daily life. I don't know why it never occurred to me earlier, but one day not too long ago, I decided to try raising my hands. And when I did, I looked at them intently and said out loud, "I am dreaming." That was quite an experience, as simple as it sounds. It was remarkable in terms of feeling like the body in a dream. So, I mean, I've had a lot weirder dreams, but that was significant because it was my first one. I like it because it wasn't about anything. And you see, I like it because, not that I have a choice, I mean, but it was the first one and there's no content, you see. And okay, then there's just one more dream that I wrote about that matters. It's called, then just really short. One day in early to mid 2016, before I left for Melbourne, I was on the phone with my friend Jimmy. We spoke shortly about regular stuff, nothing much. This is not the dream, this is real life. The conversation did not last beyond 10 minutes. After that, I went into my room to take a nap. Upon falling asleep, I immediately had a dream. I do not know whether it was lucid or not. In the dream, I saw Jimmy. He was walking slowly. I went up to him. He saw me. Then I said, "Hey, Jimmy, what are you doing here? I was just talking to you." I even raised my right hand and pointed to my right with my thumb, wherever that meant, like outside the dream in the living room. Yeah. So that's the lucid dreaming part. I've had a lot of other lucid dreams, but only those two are worth, to me, those two are worth recalling, because what I have to say about lucid dreaming, which I think many people can do, right, is that the point isn't so much, I feel the point isn't so much about the dreamscape, but the point is to recognize that that part of you that dreams is there when you are asleep and awake. Or let me put that again. The point is to get to that part of you that is there when you are asleep and awake, because it's not two different selves. It's called the dreaming double. Yeah. And so okay, so wait, I'll go on with a more recent note. This was in reply to a friend who was telling me he was doing some astral exercises. So this is just a reply to him. Dear John, you were asking me about astral stuff. I'll share some of what I know. I'll likely appear to jump. Okay. I'm reminded of a passage which acts as a good anchor and starting point when talking about all this stuff. Okay, this is the passage. I had read something about the double in his books, but my prejudices prevented me from approaching that matter with an open mind. And in my mind, there was great confusion about concepts like luminous egg or magnetic field that surrounds living beings, the energy body, and the dreaming double. I asked him if they were the same thing or if there was some difference between them. He was surprised by my question. But haven't you understood anything? We are speaking of awareness, not of physical objects. Those entities, even the perceptive unit that we call the physical body, are descriptions of the same thing. Because there are not two of you. You are you. You don't have an energy body. You are energy. You are an assemblage point that assembles emanations, and you are only one. You can have various dreams and have different approaches, different appearance in each one, either human, animal, or inorganic. And you can even dream that you are several people at the same time, but you cannot fragment your being aware. He told me that confusing the description of our various vehicles of awareness with our sense of being is common, particularly for people who have a robust and intellectual internal dialogue. Then I continued, here's a link to a record of my first dream and one more normal dream. I've had tons of other dreams like anyone else, many symbolic, psychological, some archetypal, some precognitive. I only mention these two because I find them very pure. Pure in the sense that they indicate something about my perception in a deep and obvious manner without perpetuating the personal biography, which after a certain point tends to get in the way, if anything. All in all, they both seem to indicate fluidity between dream and waking states. The lucid one indicates something more, but with both my emphasis is the same. What is that thing or the me that is there whether I'm dreaming or asleep or awake? The witnessing consciousness. In light of that, the dream of Jimmy, funny as it is even more straight up. I was the same person bringing the same continuity of memory and identity into the dream. There was no dream ego in the Jungian sense, nor any symbolic ideas of personal psychology to be deciphered. To that degree, I would say that any lucid dreaming practice is best accompanied by constantly reminding yourself that it is the same thing that's doing the dreaming, whether awake or asleep. Yeah.
May I?
Yeah. Please.
Okay. So I tend to ask a lot of my friends or group members that I run social skills groups, and I have to ask them to tell me their dreams and things like that. And from what I've read in the psychoanalytic field only, that's just what I'm going to report, and this first thing that came to my mind is like a lucid dream is a defensive dream.
Defense from what? What do you mean?
Defense from unconscious turmoil and conflict.
Okay, sorry, go on.
So if you're like not wanting to dive into the unconscious, you're going to control your dream without content, just kind of, as you say, pure.
I can see where that's coming from, but I think for me the problem with that, right, is that okay, this is just my opinion, right? To attain lucidity in the dream requires a certain control that okay, the psychoanalytic thing is to me, it's very mind. It's very mind in the sense of it's that mind that you actually wait, let me not get stuff right here. To me, it actually doesn't mean a lot because to me, it's actually just the psychoanalytic thing trying to define the thing using the simple word of control and saying that's avoidance and all, you know.
Okay,
because,
yeah, sure, you're right.
Yeah.
But can I ask you one more question?
No, sure. No, I mean, we're just like,
yeah. Might there be some content that you might not want to access?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Is there possibly some unconscious material that you don't want to access?
I mean,
like you don't like content.
No, I don't mean I don't like content. I didn't. Okay, don't take it like I don't like content. But what I mean is that, okay, there's the me that likes content. I mean, when
beyond
I say
words, do you mean like okay. Confined by words?
No. Okay, it's simply this. It's that Buddhist thing of emptiness and form. So when I say I don't like content, I don't mean that I don't like content or I you know, there has to be content. If there's no content, then there's kind of nothing to apprehend. But what I'm saying is that, and I think this can be seen from the nature of the dreams that I brought up, right? Is that I take away the don't like. My emphasis has receded from content because it's kind of like negative space. Okay, Sandy, this might be of interest to you, but ever since the head injury, you know that old hag or young woman photo, that one that illustrates bistable perception. Do you see an old hag or a young lady? That optical illusion. You know what I'm talking about, right? It's a very common one. I can see both at the same time, and the challenge that I'm trying to do now is I can't do this yet, but I'm maybe it's a personal challenge, is to cross my eyes so that I see both. No, is to cross my eyes so that I see two images, and to see an old lady in one and a young lady in another one. But as far as just looking at it, right, I can see young and old lady at the same time.
Yeah.
So
when you know what image she's talking about, right, Sandy?
I may have a copy of that if you want me to look for it.
Yeah, why don't you, if you have it somewhere.
In fact, it was on Paul Van der Klay's video recently. Yeah, he was
it's a very famous one, and
it's a very common one. It's about bistable perception. So
it's about what perception?
Bistable, that means two, stable, and bi is two. So, but you know, switching between. So when I look at that image, I see both at the same time. It's not switching between. And so why I brought that up, right? So I think it was not good for me to say that I don't like content. It's not that, but you see, content, when I say content, I think you know what I mean by content, right? But kind of like the way I think of it is, let's say you have a jug. You know, a jug, there's the content of it, which is the jug itself. But the utility of the jug comes only from the empty space. And both have to work together. Both work hand in glove, you see. But when we look at a jug, we so yeah, this is the one. This is the classic one. So I see both at the same time. Yeah. I don't have to switch. I mean, I literally see both.
Can't that statement of yours also be defensive? That when we say defensive, we mean you're going to rationalize why you're choosing non-content. Like you're going to explain why you want the container and not what's in it, because there's a utility factor. I posit that this is a defensive thing, and that's okay. Let us explore the defense, because defense is what.
Well, no, wait a minute. Sandy, let's not explore the defense, okay? Because here we're not doing psychotherapy, okay?
This is the word defense is not psychotherapy.
Well, but the way you're presenting this, it sounds like it.
I can use any language I want, and it's not psychotherapy.
Okay, I know. No, okay, Skip. I get
where. Okay, fair enough. But just hold on. It's perfectly okay for Nick and Sandy also to go offline and communicate with one another.
Okay, no, I'd rather do that.
I think just to address Sandy, right? Okay, Sandy. When I share these experiences, here's the thing. It's not like I don't have emotions or emotional turmoil, or turmoil is a bit strong a word now, but it's not like I don't have those dreams. I still do it, but I still do once in a while. But the difference is that when I do, I immediately know what it's about. I don't have to like decipher or, that's a symbol or interpret it too much. It's just like this. It's just like this. And so in that sense, I still have symbolic dreams that I have to, that are psychoanalytic. But what I'm saying is that, you see, that is still, that doesn't interest me as much as, and then you see, when I say it doesn't interest me as much, maybe this is a problem with language, you see, because there's nothing to psychoanalyze, you see. You know what I mean? Like I could go in a psychoanalysis session and I'll be totally honest and say my feelings and this and that. And after a while, what will happen, right, is there'll just be this feeling like we're trying to dig for something. And I mean, it's like yeah, and
well, I agree with you.
But that being said, there's no that being said, sorry. Yeah, there's no that being said. Yeah. But I know where you're coming from. But sometimes I being a bit cheeky, I actually like to invert it and then, ask the psychoanalyst, like, I wonder if they can do the dreaming, you see, because that is actually harder, okay, I feel this way. If I wanted to like adopt a psychoanalytic framework, I can. It's just, to me, it's actually just slicing and partitioning and building a construct. But this dreaming thing is totally different because it happens with the body. Like I mean, and only you will know.
I was simply curious what you thought about that. And now that you satiated my curiosity, I'm now interested in looking at, I'm going to use my own nomenclature.
Of course, and there's nothing wrong with it.
I don't want to be penalized for it, but but
nobody's going to penalize you. Sandy,
yeah, no one's going to penalize you.
Yeah, but I mean, we just have to be careful of the line that we're on, and I for one want to hear Nick's story and how Nick is feeling about it, and I don't want to fix you, Nick, because I think you're perfectly fine just as you are.
Oh, thank you.
Those are interesting assumptions.
Okay, so the cool thing now is like I'll go on with the next story, but I'll shift the dream into daily life now. So I'm going to describe something that's in daily life that involves my mom, but it also involves dreaming, and it's up to you guys how you want to slice it. And I mean, we'll talk about it after that, but this will be quite interesting, I think. Okay, so it's moving on from the, so this is a different kind of lucidity that I'm talking about now, and it will relate to Jung at some point. Okay, let me find it. Okay, this is called A String of Saris. Oops, wait, one sec. My mom left when I was 2 under presumably tragic and difficult circumstances. Though she tried to make contact through the years, my grandmother would destroy any letters sent to me, as I was to find out later. No sob story here, just establishing the fact that I had hardly any, almost zero contact with my mom. I only met her again when I was 27. She flew down to Singapore. When she first saw me at the airport, she broke down in tears and started to tell me sorry for other things. My first words to her were, "It's really all right. There's nothing for you to feel sorry or guilty about," and I meant it. It was a good trip, and after that, she would take the effort to call me once in a while, like every 2 to 3 weeks or so. More often when there was Facebook. Our conversations were always the same. She would ask me how I was, how things were at home, etc. I would do the same. She would also be apologetic for things that she did not need to say sorry about. In those early days of speaking to her, I felt nothing. I was polite, I would ask her about herself and things, but I did not really feel anything. I didn't know what I was supposed to feel. There wasn't any sense of making up for lost time. I definitely was not angry with her in any way. But as time went on, I had the feeling like, what is all this about? Where is all this going? I did not see much point in the kinds of conversations we were having. I did want it to be something, but didn't see how it would get anywhere. We were literally having the same kind of conversation again and again. It was probably no different from any regular conversation that a mother would have with a son, the usual check-in and so on. Except this was with someone I hadn't seen in a quarter century and had not wondered much about. So the relatedness wasn't there, or the relationship for that matter. Plus it was over the phone. As I said, I was never angry with her, but I did start to feel frustrated and irritated with our conversations. And when irritated, I would become more sensitive to her unnecessary apologeticness over whatever. Then a weird thing began to happen. Something began to crystallize in my field of perception and objectively in the outside world as well. I began to notice that people were saying sorry to me more often and beyond what more often and beyond what would be called normal for everyday life. All manner of people, different situations. It could be a client, a waiter wiping my table at the coffee shop, someone who bumped into me on the street. Obviously, at first I thought I was just noticing the word sorry more, but then it began to happen too often and sometimes in very discontinuous ways. I had a client who had to deliver something to me in person and was 10 minutes late. When he arrived, he was profusely sorry. He kept saying sorry to me. I must have even looked a bit confused after telling him it was cool. He had to run off after dropping the item off. Less than 5 minutes after he left, I heard my door open and someone come up the steps. He stuck his head in and said, "Hey Nick, I'm really sorry, man," then ran off and disappeared. At its peak, I even made a friend notice it. We were having lunch. The waitress came with our food and brushed my friend's shoulder and said, "Oh, sorry." My friend obviously did not think much of it. I then told him about what was going on with me and all the sorries I was noticing, and we came up with a friendly challenge. I said, "Let's proceed with the remainder of our day hanging out as normal, and if we come across at least 5 unsolicited sorries, he would have to admit there was something strange." 5 was his idea, by the way. Unsolicited means no purposely bumping into people or dropping change when it was handed to us kind of thing. In the subsequent 4 to 5 hours, we ended the day with 8 sorries thrown our way. The most ridiculous one was when we were sitting on a bench smoking. About 3 meters across from us was a guy eating an ice cream cone. He dropped the cone on the floor, let out a soft growl, and then bent down to pick it up. My friend and I looked over, and the guy looked up at us and sheepishly said, "Sorry, man." For what, I wondered. I looked at my friend, who just shook his head. Having these strange sorries following me around in my environment made me consider them with a degree of rigorous self-analysis. It was quite straightforward. I asked myself, am I expecting an apology from anyone or anything? The answer was no. I obviously considered my mum and what was going on with her, especially since that had the charge of affect, which was my irritation at the arc of our conversations and my sensitivity to her apologeticness. But as deep as I went, I knew I did not expect an apology for anything from her. If anything, I was frustrated at the lack of relatedness, which I also knew couldn't be forced. What was it, I wondered? When the world keeps telling me sorry, what can it mean? The best answer I came up with was that if the world keeps telling me sorry, then I must feel like I am wronged or entitled to something. I still couldn't figure it out, but I did make an effort to not get irritated during my conversations with my mum. And it's not even like I was getting irritated with her. It was more like some inner voice or feeling that would be irritated or judgmental about the conversation. Time and the environmental sorries went on for another 2 to 3 months, during which I went through some pretty rough things emotionally and at home. It got quite bad and unbearable and brought me to a point where I really couldn't take it. And one day, seeing no way out, I picked up the phone and called my mum, seeking some sort of solace and a listening ear. She heard me out and she was happy too. She said what she could, including sorries for only being able to do that much to help me out, but I noticed that I did not feel irritated. Perhaps it was my state and whatever I was going through, but we spoke more after that, and it did feel like our relationship had gone up a notch, even if in a small way. Shortly after this, the environmental sorries dissipated and everything went back to normal, so to speak, along with my irritation having disappeared totally. Things did feel different with my mom from then on, though it did not necessarily mean that I called her up more. That is something that takes effort, like relationships do. Yeah. So that's
Nick.
Yeah.
Hi. So tomorrow's Mother's Day, and
isn't it?
If you'd like to share a little bit more, do you know why your mother left you at age 2? Do you want to go into more details? And do you feel you were nurtured? You know, one of the things that's the challenge in the secular world that we live in, and the world I'm familiar with, is we live in our little boxes. Grandparents are often long ways away, you know, hours of driving, and some people have to fly to see their grandparents. And so we live in these very nuclear families in Canada anyway. Yep. Whereas the traditional Indigenous society, and still is on the First Nations, also known as reservations, where they have more of a communal concept of raising a child, you know, that it takes a village to raise a child. So anyway, just wondering, what was the cultural makeup of life in Singapore when you were a child? Like, your mother had some sort of issue that she had to leave you at age 2. You can share if you want on that. And then, you know, what is the culture in that area?
Okay, in Singapore, it's pretty much the, you know, the normal family makeup, kind of like or lack of a better word, you know, that middle class kind of parents, kids, and cousins that or rather parents, children, and relatives that you see once in a while. But for me, I had, my extended family is quite close. meaning my dad's brothers and sisters and my dad's brothers and sisters and their children. And that's how I got that's how I got the so-called like to do like certain privileged things when I was young growing up. So on one hand, I wasn't lacking in love, so to speak, but on another hand, I was kind of like an orphan also. And that family, okay, I'll just be very direct here. So my family, meaning family in Singapore, I got to grow up with my cousins, blah blah blah, but they are Catholic, and there is this very big archetypal family shadow, and that definitely took its toll because I can see how it played out in my dad's life, in just in the whole drama. And I sometimes, like, or maybe even often, would be some sort of dustbin, right? And
I'm sorry, some sort of what?
Some sort of dustbin, like some sort of black sheep, some sort of convenient hook for projections. And when I say projection here, I mean some convenient hook for things that people don't want to acknowledge. You see, and I noticed that this also went out into my life in like as in outside of my family. And before I go on, let me say that yes, it's a black sheep, it's a dustbin thing, but that doesn't mean it's all bad, because that includes being the winner. You know,
they were projecting this on you, you felt?
Yeah. Yes, no, with my family, definitely, you know, it can be things like knowing from my cousins that, or knowing from my cousins, or knowing from just reading between the lines, or sometimes you don't even have to try too hard, that you know, you are the negative example for someone who's talking to their children, but then on a different occasion you become the positive example. So that's what I mean by the dustbin. And I have to be clear that, you know, it while it sounds negative, it's I've also been the winner sometimes, you see, like just like, you know, I was saying, like, okay, let's say it comes to family, it's like being the negative or positive example. And the thing is, you haven't actually changed or done anything, you know, so it's all coming from them. And I guess when I went out and, you know, was just doing my thing, I would notice that my successes would sometimes also come like in a manner that, like, how do I put this? That means I was the winner, but kind of in that underdog, or I got in through the back window kind of sense. So it wasn't all bad, but the dynamic was such that, you know, it was like, yeah, it was like that. Sorry, have I answered your question?
I don't quite understand could you elaborate on, I'm married to a Roman Catholic, so I have some of the Roman Catholic faith, but it's not, she's not really particularly dyed in the wool kind of Roman Catholic, so hasn't been any conflict. But I was just wondering if you might elaborate, what was that you were saying about the influence on your father? Some shadow, did you suggest, of the Catholic upbringing, or on him or something? I don't know.
Okay, I think I have to, like, maybe be a bit careful when I use the word Catholic here, because it might be different in, like, you know, in America and Canada, where it's a lot bigger, the population's bigger, and there's so many denominations. The drama might be different, but I think I think what I'm trying to say is that there are a lot of skeletons in the closet, and so there's like sometimes growing up could get very not could get growing up was sometimes very traumatic, and it's not just growing up. I mean, this persisted through youth, and I think I've just been very sensitive and empathic since I was young. I think I was born that way, just being able to see, right? And so what it looks like to me is, you know, just them throwing sandbags from one person to another, and I get sometimes caught in the crossfire. But I think what I meant by the Catholic thing, okay, maybe it's not about Catholicism, but it seems to me like, I don't know, it's the usual story of, you know, the shadow that's unacknowledged, and then actually it is about Catholicism. You know, the unacknowledged shadow, and then, you know, doing things in the name of the Lord and love, and then you actually see that all those things were the things that cause all and perpetuate the nonsense. It's that kind of thing, just the usual story. It's not very interesting, but I can answer more.
Nick, I wonder, where are you now? Like,
I'm in a room.
With all this, sure, but in the mythopoetic realm, where are you now? What do you see? What are your hopes? What are your challenges?
What are my hopes?
And challenges and fears, or what, if you want to dive into it. Where, like today, I think I have a mental picture of like how the building up happened in you, but I'm very curious about your perception right now, because you know that you are a shaman, you know, you.
No, I never said that.
No. Means that, yeah, you are not healing it, but you can understand that those aspects. Probably, if I'm not. I know you mean you are not a shaman. I don't mean that, but yeah, you get what I'm trying to ask?
Yes, okay.
Can anybody help me out here?
No, okay. To answer your first question, I'm mythopoetically in my room. So yeah. And okay, Kushbu, like my challenges, my interests, I'm still the same person, but one fundamental thing that is different now, and this ties in with the memory, the energy thing, whatever, is I feel like I'm, well, this is gonna sound strange. I feel like I've transcended time, or rather I've transcended the way I was embedded in time now. So okay, what that means for me in a body, in a reality, in a meat kind of way, right, is that I am totally okay where I am. Like if you ask me the challenges or things to do or whatever, right, I still have hopes, dreams. I'm like, you know, writing, trying to get back to making music. I'm trying to make sense in this new COVID world. I don't think it's any different from any of you. Like, you know, being useful in my day-to-day, that kind of thing. But it feels totally different from, I don't have any worries, right, at all. Like really, I don't have any worries at all. And when I say I've transcended time, right, I don't mean that in any fairy way. I think what I mean by that simply is I am not energetically bound by I don't know what you want to call it, karma.
Indoctrinations, different indoctrinations.
Yeah, whether it's programming, karma, or you know, just some false beliefs that I think that's why when I said that, you know, I have no worries, it really means that. But what does it mean to have no worries? You know, it's actually not easy to get there. I feel like I've also like transcended my mind, but you see, you see when we say these things like transcend the mind, transcend time, and all that, the transcendentalist in us, you know, hear that and think it sounds grand. But when I say I've transcended my mind, what I actually mean is that my center is now something else other than my mind. And what comes as a result is actually clarity, and I do feel a bit more intelligent, but I see the limits of my mind, including the limits of my intelligence. I know, like, some people are better than me in this, some people are better than me in that, but that is just the mind. But that is not my center anymore. So my center is more like this circular thing that,
Sorry.
yeah. Transcend the mind. All I mean by transcend the mind, right, is I have seen, and I have not just seen momentarily, but there's been this fundamental shift such that I've seen the mind for what it is. Yeah.
Do you have an aspiration of actually, you mentioned a healer or something like that. Do you have an aspiration of being an analyst or something like that?
Did I mention healer? Wow. No, I think I think my aspiration is just to be useful.
Yeah.
Yeah, to be useful in I don't know. Okay, on one hand, yeah, my aspiration is just to be useful to whatever community I find myself embedded in. Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Using what sort of skill or talent or illumination? How do you find yourself being most useful?
I think actually not. I think, yeah, I know that I can relate to people in a certain way that, given the right setup, can be very, very useful to them. Yeah, I know I have that, yeah, empathy, or yeah, I find that yep. And sorry Tim, I mean, it's like, not that I'm stuck, but
I thought you were gonna say music because you said that you wanna go.
no, yeah,
I really thought.
yeah, no, Kushbu. I think why I was like kind of maybe I wasn't reticent, but why maybe it sounded like I was stuck is because with this whole whatever shift experience and all that, right? Like, yes, I do have aspirations that, but not in the same way anymore. And okay, the more important thing that I was trying to say is that whatever I've been through, my future is already contained in my past.
It makes sense what you say. It makes sense.
Yeah,
totally.
no. So Kushbu, when you say music, I would say yes, and it might not come out and on the top of my mind now, like in the sense that I say, oh, I want to achieve this, I want to do that, because it might not come out that way, but it will come out simply because I know it's inevitable, you see.
Yeah.
And it's not in this aspirational, let me go and achieve, and because I've kind of been through the whole hero 9 yards kind of thing. And that's not to say, I don't mean that at all in a been there, done that kind of way, I mean that more in like what I said, that my future is contained in my past. And I've seen the illusion of that self that, I'm going to get this done. I mean, you know, we need to get things done or what, but things get done now in this totality for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
like I've chopped off, or maybe that's wrong to say. It's not even like had to chop off, but just unnecessary stuff has just fallen automatically off, you know. And since the head injury period, it's been like so hilarious, right? Because sometimes I see the nonsense of, that I was embedded in, or you know, just the absurdity of the world of myself, and you know, it's been very funny.
Yeah, I
And
think I
funny.
I resonate with what you say. Let me tell you one thing. So I don't have like I also don't have artistic goals. I don't have commercial goals like financial goals, but I have one very specific thing that I want to like live into forest kind of area, like you know mountain kind of area, like nature, like real in nature with the with the natural way, you know, not that fancy village house kind of a thing. That's where I'm going because I feel most secure and nurtured over there. So where like do you have some kind of a direction like that? That is my direction, kind of.
uh, to like I do want to explore like you know, things. Sorry if I'm like not saying a lot, but okay, I think I'll put it this way. Prior to this, like you know, the music career I had, or the goals I've had before this, right? When I look back, actually, I've kind of um, I've always gotten what I wanted, and I've not just gotten what I wanted, like I've gotten more than I wanted. But what I realized about it is that it always came to me sideways, or when I stopped wanting it. You know, so it's almost as if before this it was like before this a big part of the journey was actually getting in sync between desire and reality. You know, so it's not that I did not get what I desired. In fact, I feel like looking back in my life, I got more than I desired, but I never got it when I wanted it, you see. So it's about, for me now, it's about doing without doing, and letting things unfold.
Effortlessness,
Sorry?
effortlessness,
Yes.
effortlessness.
Yes,
Hmm.
this a
Hmm.
certain effortlessness to things.
There's something really to that, Nick, I can assure you.
Sorry, Skip, can you repeat that?
I said there's something really to that. It works.
Something
Life
something
works
real.
that life
Yeah,
works that way.
exactly, you see. So you see, so a big thing about this memory thing also is that you know, I realized that we people tend to remember whatever will perpetuate whatever they want to be. You know, so so in that sense, right, we often go around with a fair bit of amnesia. You know, we'll automatically be um, we'll automatically be putting aside, or not putting aside, but we will not be remembering the things that don't serve our current narrative, you see. And again, this is an energetic thing, meaning that it's I say this from the body, you know, not memory as images, or but memory as what is also stored in the body. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm reminded of a Buddhist story, or sort of a saying, which is, if you meet the Buddha coming on the road, kill him. Kill him, right? You know that one.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and do you know why?
No, go on, Skip. Yeah, tell all of us.
You don't know why?
No, I forgot.
Well, okay. This is just my interpretation. No sage ever told me this. Okay.
Yeah.
But if you meet the Buddha on a path, he's by definition not the Buddha.
So that's kind of like the Tao can't be named.
Yeah, cannot be named, right? And so if it's like Islam, you can't really name God. I mean, even I guess in Catholicism, right? And in Judaism, Yahweh doesn't have any vowels, I guess. It's all consonants. YH, WH, right? And so if as soon as a person starts to build an empire around whatever it is they're doing. For example, I think of the fundamentalist pastors who built these crystal palaces, right? Over time, I mean, they work at it, but they find what attracts people, and then they turn it into a money machine rather than what it is that it was attracting people. Yeah. Something like that. Yeah. It's kind of the reason why I've done all the things that I've done the way I've done them, is that the only thing I knew in 2010, let's say, was that Dr. Jung had helped me along my path. And I just wanted to be a witness for that, basically. And sometimes I've gone astray on that, right? Because I start to think of it as a tool or a weapon instead of as a way of life, let's say. Or what Tim talks about, the Wasishu culture. I just, I wrote books, and part of me was hoping that I would get paid for the books, but actually I don't mind that I don't get paid. Right. I don't mind that I.
But it would be nice.
But it would be nice, yes.
Well, no. I mean, to a very small degree, though, because once you have enough to eat and a place to live, as the Marines used to say when something was going wrong for them, they'd say, well, it ain't my life and it ain't my wife, so why worry? Everything else is okay, as long as you're not going to lose your life, or as long as you're not going to lose your partner, then other things are okay.
Okay. if I can just say, right, so what started to, one of the things that started to happen after September the 30th of last year, and it's still there, is I have this, like, I don't know what you call it, like, it's almost like an organ meaning like a limb.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a shamanic ally, but what that means is that, okay, when I talk to all of you now, right, I mean, I know that you are separate people that I'm talking to, but simultaneously, I'm hearing other things. Yeah, that means it's like, and so, okay, so on one hand, I can say it's almost like there's this perceptual overlay, which is like almost like matrix-like, right? So you can be telling me, and this has happened with Nancy, it's happened with all of you, you know, where, so I'm in the conversation that we're having now, and then you can tell that, you know, we've been talking and exchanging, right? But there is this other level of information also. So what I was trying to say is that on one hand, it's like, you can say that's like a perceptual overlay, but that's actually wrong, because it is more like this thing that's always been there. This it's beyond language.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's simultaneous. So you see, now I'm talking to you in English. We're talking, you know, I'm saying this and you're saying that and all. But there is this other layer, and this other layer is kind of like, it's polymorphous, and meaning that as our conversation goes on, okay, like the previous conversation we had where Sandy, where we were doing the MDR, where I was here, and then Sandy said something about Jordan Peterson or what. Remember about the gotcha thing? Yeah, okay. When you said that, it immediately, not that it reminded me of another conversation I had with the guy called Nick, actually, separately, but it's like constructing imaginal reality, and it's not I don't mean imaginal as in fantasy, you see, because I don't know how to put it. It's kind of beyond words, but it's another layer of information. And this other layer of information isn't just like my idea about things, because I can draw from this to put back into the real world, or to get information that is sometimes just simply non-local. That means I can say something and someone say, hey, how do you know that? Then, you know, the answer wouldn't make sense to the person, you know, because it might be, I knew that because of the way you said that word, which sounded like that word, which means that this. You know, but if I actually said that, that's like, huh? How does that make sense? Or how do you connect that? Yeah. And,
definitely. That definitely happens. And it's definitely happened in this group, no doubt about that.
Yeah. So
serendipity, do you mean?
Like, no.
Yes. In fact, like, you know, I was telling you guys about how it's like in the world. Okay, I'll tell you a few planes of how it is. So like one thing is like I cannot leave my house and see traffic without significant numbers. Okay, but put that aside. It can also be things like I'm writing, or maybe not even writing. Let's put it in something even crazier. I'm talking to a friend online, or like I'm talking to you guys now, and we have a certain topic or a certain arc such that you are going to say something back, and then in that arc, and a message comes up from a friend, which, you know, basically is exactly what you're saying, or can even continue the conversation orthogonally, except so you can actually say that thing to me, my friend's message comes through, and I can actually just read my friend's message out, and you think that I'm talking to you.
Synchronicity.
You know,
synchronicity.
Exactly. So yeah, but it's so pervasive now that, like I said, you know, we can have this conversation now, and we're, you know, talking about a topic, and a message comes up, and you think I'm talking to you, but actually I'm reading my friend's message, but you know, it's so in sync. And it's happened so much that that's why I said, you know, permanent state of synchronicity, because it happens so much that you know, actually it can drive a normal person insane, simply because after a certain threshold, right, if you don't have a certain fluidity or just this certain way of bridging everything, you will go insane, because you know, where's you would go insane because you would want your individuality. You would not know where you ended and the rest of the world began. And as much as, you know, people might talk about, oh, mystical experience or this or that, there is a price to pay to, you know, get across a certain bridge. And yeah, but yeah, it's very fun.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, Nick, I was just wondering if you're comfortable with your spiritual identity. Because when I was your age, maybe just a little bit younger, I encountered a presenter, a Buddhist gentleman, and rather notable businessman at the time, in Vancouver. He and his brother founded a chain of restaurants called the Old Spaghetti Factory. And anyway, his name's Dr. Poulos. He's Buddhist. And he just made this presentation. He just said that everybody needs to have a well-rounded life. You have to have all these different spokes in your wheel, and you should have a spiritual spoke, and that in your wheel. And I thought, well, I'm just a secular person. So in short, I just thought, well, I don't really know what I believe. And so, you know, I'm still on this journey of trying to figure out, you know, totally my spiritual identity. I was just wondering, have you ever felt that way, that you needed to go around, like I sort of was like Goldilocks, you know, trying different bowls of porridge and, you know, testing them, and you know, still basically walked away from organized religion myself. But anyway, I just wondered if you wanted to talk about how you feel. Are you feeling, you know, at ease with your spiritual identity?
Definitely, and I even have a short story with an artifact to share that will tie in with something in Nancy's video. But I will have to go to the bathroom for 1 second. I'll be right back.
Okay, take your time. Yeah.
This synchronicity of this group is something we should talk about, you know.
Yeah.
Or we should think about next week when we are taking week off.
Well, we're not taking a week off, but we're going to go a little easy on Tuesday.
Okay.
I mean,
why? What changed in a overnight, in 1 day, 24 hours?
Maybe I got some sleep. I had been up till working until 2 in.the morning, and then I had to get up at 7 or something, and I wasn't in a very good place. But and Tuesday I have to have a doctor's appointment, so I can't be on at 1 o'clock. So I just said, I'll come on at 2, which is going to be late for you. It's going to be 11:30 for you, but just for a general check-in. Just okay. No featured speaker, just
I very good. This is like, see, this is synchronicity. Like what I want happens, kind of. Yeah. Good.
Okay, yeah, but it's not so much a synchronicity because you said what you want. I'm sort of complying.
Miles, I'll answer.
Did I tell you that?
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
I'll answer you after I share this. Okay, so again, we're okay. Okay, so after September 30th, okay, so Skip, I started to watch a lot of your videos, right? And there were certain lifelines at the start it was very intense. Intense meaning. Okay, simply meaning that I was making the adjustment. You know, the archetypal world was coming up, and you know, I was making the adjustment, and um, so many things were synchronistic. Like I remember I went to Thailand and I made a playlist called Pelican, and I was looking at Pelican stuff, and then Nancy had this video about the Pelican um, with that image from Jerome's wall. You know, and that's just one of the small ones. Okay, but there was this other one where I was watching in one of her Christian individuation videos where she said at one point she had some numinous experience involving junk mail. Okay, so I don't know if you guys will remember that, but she remembers that, right? So when I heard that, I was like, because mine wasn't junk mail; it was far bigger. But okay, I'm just going to say what it is, right? But if you all need to understand it, you can ask me later. But okay, let me find it first. Sorry, one sec. Okay, so this happened. This happened after, like maybe two to three, about 2 months after I went up to northern Thailand, and so this is my junk mail experience, but but okay, I'll just tell you. Okay, so this is a short story I wrote. I mean, it's not a story, but it's what happened. But this is something I wrote after it happened, and it just captures a small bit of it. And this is what I actually wrote back then. I've since written a lot more because I could, and the experience was actually, it gets a lot weirder. But this is just a short excerpt that, not excerpt, this is just something I wrote back then to, yeah, as a mnemonic device. Okay. I start with a quote from a book. Within our sphere of perception, there is a force separated from what we call oneself, which is detectable through dreaming. That force can be made aware of itself, absorbing the principles of our personality and behaving with independence. The sensation that dealing with it produces in us is unspeakable because it is an inorganic being. Okay, so I start now. It has been a year since I left Singapore. I'm not sure if absence makes the heart grow fonder, but it makes the heart grow. Change can be hard when you're not sure what you're changing into. One evening in late April, I was in a low mood and caught in feelings of uncertainty. Adding to my irritation, I had just lost a pair of earphones, which I bought to replace another one I lost. They were cheap, trusty earphones, which I buy because I know I might lose them, but never this soon. On this gloomy day, the thought of losing them again triggered cascading feelings of frustration. In the midst of all this, the line, "be as nobody," comes to mind, breaking the numbing pulse of my wallowing. I get reminded of an old friend who once told me that in the manner of advice, be as nobody. He said that in times of change, it was important to let go of all conceptions, but the real challenge lay in doing away with the conceiver itself. Then I hear a few Gestapo-sounding knocks on my front door, which I found odd, as everyone usually uses the buzzer. I open the door and see him, a pleasant-looking Australian guy holding a clipboard. He tells me there's been an accident and he's from the insurance company and asks me if a certain someone is staying here. He shows me the clipboard, and when I see the name, I experience a jolt of discombobulation. I see the name No Bobby TB, NOBOBY TB. The first thought in my mind is dyslexics of the world untie, which I find funny, and this throws me into a state. I experience a strange tension within me, the desire to laugh, the remnants of my earlier mood, my own situation, the ring of the name No Bobby. In the midst of all the tension, something arises, like an impulse, and I catch on to it. Like when you're trying to focus when in a daze and things are getting clearer. I find myself suddenly experiencing a cold detachment. It is quite a switch, and I know what to do next. I look the Australian guy straight in the eye, filled with the imprint of my friend's advice, without any feeling, seeking to contain the moment. And with all the force born of whatever vacuity I could muster, I say, nobody is not staying here, calmly addressing the person in front of me. We probably held the stare for a good 3 seconds before we both burst out in a laugh. I quickly say to recover, I quickly ask him to recover, what kind of name is No Bobby? He tells me, I just got this name as a contact in case of emergency at this address. And you are? He asked me, pointing to the form. I'm not No Bobby, I said, holding my friend's advice in mind. He smiled. I told him there was no such person staying here, and after a few more questions, he was on his way. I spent the next month going about life as usual. The only difference was that I held my friend's advice in mind as a mantra of sorts. The month turned out to be packed with activity, and some experiences were significant in the larger context of my life. I went on a holiday that changed and broadened my perspective of myself. For 3 weeks, I was suspended in magical time along with someone else. On the same day she left, and this experience concluded, I went back after sending her to the airport, and while bending over to open the letterbox, I saw a pair of earphones on the floor similar to the ones I had lost. And one of the letters in the mail was addressed to Nobody Ibako. I picked up the earphones, clutched them, reminding myself not to lose them this time. Okay, that's the story. What about it, yo? Yeah, so that's it. So Miles, so that person wasn't, that person was a person, but I knew who and what that person was. So we can talk about that if you want, but I don't know if you'll go down a rabbit hole. So I got a letter to nobody.
Well, I'm very curious to see your rabbit hole.
Yeah, it's actually a lot weirder, but you see, but anyway, yeah. So we can talk about that, but I would say that when that happened, right? If you ask me what I saw, it was exactly like what I described. It was an Australian guy holding a clipboard with a form on it, pointing to it. But immediately I knew that this was significant, and I know in what way, and I can say it out, but I don't know. It won't be obscure, but it might be like meaningless. Yeah.
Yeah, I've just been looking for. Okay, here's the answer. Just a minute. Okay, do you remember, or did you see a movie called The Man Who Knew Infinity?
I've heard of it. I haven't watched it. What's it about?
Well, it's about an Indian mathematician named Srinivasa Ramanujan. Do you know that name, Kushbu?
No.
Does Kushbu
Yes,
know?
yes,
Oh,
yes,
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 she
very
does.
well,
Okay.
very well,
Very
very
well.
well.
Okay.
And I think I also see the similarity of the experience which you are drawing from.
Right.
What
right.
was the
Yeah.
what
Okay.
was the
So,
experience in the movie? Yeah.
well, Srinivasa Ramanujan was a brilliant mathematician. He could just see things. And, you know, I've had this on a very low level, like when I was in the 4th grade and my teacher introduced long division to me. I could just see the answer. I never had to work out the long division, right? But this guy was a million times more than me. And although he was a very religious man, and he saw mathematics as and numbers as signs of divinity.
God
And
speaking to him.
God
He
speaking
saw
to
it,
him, right?
and that is why he was so the very thing which you are categorizing as a weird, Nick.
Categorizing as what, Kushbu?
As weird.
As
Weird,
weird.
weird.
Yeah, okay.
But for him, it was God's words to him,
Yeah,
and those words was numbers. But
right.
that is why, and that is why that is where his sufferings also came from. Kind of, his glory came from there, but his internal turmoil, like external glory, came from those numbers, but internal turmoil also came from those numbers, because in India, a lot of people said that he's going crazy.
Yeah.
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 I mean, yeah, I like Skip was reading from the Red Book. I remember one part which I really liked. What? There's no madhouse. You are the madhouse.
Yeah, the crazy professor and the cook.
You are the madhouse.
Yeah. So anyway, I'll just tell you one anecdote, but you need to go see this movie. It's called The Man Who Knew Infinity. And
Okay, I will. I will.
And your story about seeing numbers everywhere really triggered this for me. So at one point in the movie, Professor Hardy, who is this professor that actually invited him to come to Cambridge, and mind you, this guy was basically some sort of shipping clerk or something like that, but he could see all these theorems, and he had read famous mathematicians, and then he did extrapolated on what they had done incredibly. And so later in his life, unfortunately, he died very young, and later in life, he was in the hospital in London, and Hardy went to see him in a taxi cab. And on the taxi cab was the number 1729, 1729. And Hardy comes in, and of course they're ended numbers. So Hardy comes into the hospital room and says, well, I wrote in a taxi cab numbers 1729. It's a very uninteresting number, right?
Yep.
That's what that's what Hardy said to Ramanujan. And Ramanujan says, oh no, sir, it's a very interesting number. It's the smallest number expressible as the sum of two cubes in two different ways.
Wow.
Okay. It's the smallest number expressible as the sum of two cubes in two different ways. So you want to know what they are? Here you go. 1729 equals 1 cubed plus 12 cubed minus 9 cubed, or equal, and also equal to 9 cubed plus 10 cubed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, so 1 cubed plus 12 cubed equals 9 cubed plus 10 cubed. And it's so that's expressible in two different ways. And it's the smallest number that can be expressed in that way. So anyway, that's how smart he was. And when apparently in 1979, they found a lost notebook of his. And I don't know the details, but you could look this fellow up on Wikipedia, and it basically, overthrew some mathematical beliefs that, he had died in like 1930, but they found this notebook and it just turned mathematics on its end when they found this notebook in 1979. So
the man who saw infinity.
The man who knew infinity.
Or knew infinity. Okay.
Yeah, the man who knew infinity. And so the other thing that I was thinking about earlier on when you were talking, there's a couple of things. One was, did you ever see Slaughterhouse-Five or read the book by Kurt Vonnegut?
Kurt Vonnegut, yeah, that was a really. Is it the one about the Dresden bombings? Was that the one, or was there another one?
Well, yeah, it wasn't really about the Dresden bombings, but it begins with the Dresden bombings.
Oh, okay, yeah. In school, but I don't recall it that well now.
Well, okay, so the essence of it was that it was Billy Pilgrim, 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 and
Yep.
Billy Pilgrim became unstuck in time.
Oh yeah, I wrote about that. I've experienced that before.
Right, and
Yes.
so when you were talking about this liberated energy, what was happening to Billy Pilgrim was he was unstuck in time and kept ending up at different points in his life. Right.
Yeah, I've.
And even though he got shot to death, the good news was that he somehow got sucked up to Tralfamadore and ended up in a capsule, or a sort of a geodesic dome with Valerie Perrine wearing very scanty clothes. So it wasn't all bad.
You mean like a Buckminster Fuller kind of?
Yeah, like that. Yeah. So he and Valerie were lost together. And so anyway, when you were talking about being sort of, disconnected from things, I think you're in good company. Kurt Vonnegut was the same thing. And so other comments here. Sandy, do you have other things?
I'm starting to fade here. I'm going to have to
Okay.
call it a night. But thanks so much, Nick. It's been really interesting to hear this.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was an interesting tale indeed. And so thanks, Tim. We'll see you again soon.
Okay, good enough. Thanks.
Good night. Peace.
Thanks, Tim.
And meanwhile, Brendan has come. So
Miles was asking me something before that, and I just wanted to address that. Miles, you're asking me if I was comfortable, like where I was spiritually. Definitely, and I think for me, it's not just about. I mean, okay, short answer, yes, but there's this other aspect to it, which it kind of relates to 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 the story I just told, the one about the letter. The other aspect of it is that there is this, for me, there's this point that you have to cross, like where after that, I mean, there's no separation, but it's a don't really have a choice. So it's like a perpetual leap of faith, but there's no going back kind of thing. And beyond that, there's no, you see, once I'm past that, or once you're past that point, there's no doubt anymore. You know, and having no doubt anymore doesn't mean that, you know, I'm in perpetual bliss in that, you know, airy-fairy sense. It's not about that, but I think what I'm trying to say is that once you cross that point, crossing that point means something, you see. And so certain questions just do not arise at all. And okay, on a more like pedantic level, like certain things about my language also has changed. Like, for example, I find myself, like, I don't use the word hypocrisy anymore. I know what hypocrisy is, and, you know, I mean, I can exhibit behavior or things that look hypocritical, right? But I realized that I don't use the word because like things appear more harmonious most of the time, including the contradictions. Yeah, but that's on a very mundane kind of level, you see. But to me, it says something about how I apprehend things. I don't know if I'm describing that very well, but I think the important thing is that, yeah, beyond just feeling comfortable in our own skin, the bigger thing is actually having made that cross. And while it might not be totally obvious or obvious at all what that letter thing had to do with it, but let's just say receiving that letter, meeting that person, which wasn't a person, but I knew what it was, what he was. That was like more than 15 years in the making, and I know which.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm thinking you sort of accepted the letter was a message to you, you know, because
not a message. It was
okay.
Yeah, go on. Yeah.
Well, it's just you know, we are all really nobodies. Doesn't matter if you're Jeff Bezos. We're all going to just be here for, if we're lucky, you know, 95 years thereabouts, and you know, there's 106 billion people, I think is the number of humans have walked on this planet. 106 billion over the 200,000 years. So, you know, it's sort of like we do have to just relax as much as we can. So in the hypocrisy concept of not really using that word is because, yeah, we're all hypocrites. You know,
it's not, wait, Miles, oh no, maybe I should.
Well, I'm just relating to what you're saying, and you know, maybe it's registering for me for whatever reason on a level of saying, yeah, you know, I relate to that because, you know, I know that, you know, there's certain things we should be doing individually and collectively, and we really better do these things if we're going to survive. But nevertheless, you know, I can't say that I'm doing these things myself. So, you know, it's sort of like we do have to have a live and let live, live and let die attitude.
Yeah. I mean, I hope you guys are not seeing like the letter to nobody and seeing nobody in the sense of like the opposite of nobody. It's like getting a letter to winner because it's not like that at all. It is about the annihilation of polarities, of inner, outer, of, you know, it, and then that's why for me it was significant that I saw on the form, it was like, it said no Bobby rather than nobody, because then I just saw that I had to mirror the B and then make it a D and make that statement of like nobody is not staying here, which is really saying it to him. And then getting the letter later with the earphones was, it's, I don't know, it's like, I was fusing, okay, I'll just say it out. I knew that the person standing there was my, what people call a shamanic ally. And what I did was to acknowledge it. You see, so it's like, okay, if you guys could understand earlier what I was saying about there being a simultaneous imaginal, you know, the simultaneous layer of information that's going on at the same time as we speak, then that experience of, you know, when he knocked on the door and whatever I said to him, and it was shaking hands with it. You know? And so when you think, well, so, yep.
There's this book which is constantly, like, while you speak, which is constantly popping in my head, and I have to put it out here. King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. That is the book. And I feel I am no analytic psychology, but I operate through feelings. So I feel like you are in that, you have tapped into that magician energy. Like it is just constantly coming to me. So that, and you are approaching supreme stage of Lover. And so yesterday night I was listening to one Alan Watts talk. It's a 3-hour long talk where the mystical experiences, he described it. He said that we should actually use that word, the experience, as a tapping into the ecological consciousness, aligned with the ecological dimension, like our environment, which gives us energy to provide us the life energy, basically oxygen, sun, air, gravity. So mystical experiences should be in a spoken language, should be said ecological consciousness, which I really liked. So yeah, so I the two things, I think it will make more sense if you say that your experiences are like, you know, tapping into the ecological consciousness. I'm just giving my typology to it. Okay.
No, cool. It's cool, Khushbu, because when you say ecological consciousness, right? The first thing that comes up in my mind is this idea of entities, meaning that an ecology, you know, as in when I hear the word ecology, I think of what defines different entities, because it's not just body unit, animal unit, you know, it's that and a lot more, you see. And I mean, some people call it spirits, but it's not spirits in that airy way, but you know, it's these different entities, these ecologies of different assemblages, of different frameworks that are not just descriptions, but they are, that's why I use the word entities, they are alive. You see, and I mean, like, okay, even the meeting we're having now, or the meetings we've had before, when you know, it really gets in sync, there's that ecological thing, there's that group mind, which, you know, is made up of all of us, but it's has a small sentience of its own if you perceive it that way.
In India, the entities which you are talking about, in India, like every month, every individual have to, like, they, according to their own stars and things like that, they have rituals for them. they have days for them. They have celebrations for them. There are feeding days for them. Like you feed your whoever is with you, like those spirits in your ecology. So you feed them. You ask for forgiveness. Here, there is one day where you dance with them midnight. So we have the rituals like that. So yeah, I know what you mean, because in our culture it is we have a ritual when we are supposed to be consciously interacting with them. So I really like understand what you mean, rather it is the right word. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Kushbu. And Miles, I think okay, I think I have to be careful with and I don't mean this about it was just it's about what I was saying, right? I think when I brought up the hypocrisy example just now, it wasn't so much about hypocrisy, but it's in that class of like when I said I have less emphasis on content. And I said before that I said I don't like content. It's not that I don't like, but it's about a shift in my way of apprehending things. So it's not even about like whether things are hypocritical or not. It's more about um, it's more about how seeing how things unify rather than divide has taken precedence in my mode of apprehension. You see, so okay. So actually, what I was saying is that when I see something that other people might describe as hypocritical and they might use that word, what I actually see is synthesis, even though it doesn't look like that. Do you kind of know what I mean? And this I guess this goes into the area of like the ironies of life, or even I don't know why this suddenly came out in mind. Like let's say the Edward Snowden thing, of all places he ended up in Russia, and there's that poetic ironic thing or what, but I don't even see it as irony. I mean, saying it's harmonious might sound a bit deranged, right? But there is just this.
I sort of relate to what you're saying about synthesis.
I mean? Yes.
Synthesis coming out of what initially might seem like a hypocrisy.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that I don't see the opposition. Yeah.
So, for example, like in these, when somebody challenges me and says, oh, you're a hypocrite, it's like, oh, okay. I guess I need to do some synthesis. So case in point is one of the things I said we really should all do individually and collectively is a plant-based diet. Okay, now that's an affront to a lot of people. And so when I'm here in my home saying, okay, I'm vegan, my wife looks at me and says, no, you're not. You just had baking and there was an egg in that and there was milk, It's like, well, okay, I'm not a vegan entirely, So, but anyway, so it meant I had to synthesize an identity that I could be comfortable with, and hopefully my family would accept, because they're not really all that concerned about plant-based diet. They definitely are leaning that way. But anyway, so I came up with, well, I'm not a vegan, but I'm a friend to all our relations. And a friend is never perfect. Like if I was saying, I'm your friend, just be aware, I'm not a perfect friend. I'll forget to send you a birthday card. I'll forget all these things. So anyway, but I just agree that everything presents itself as an opportunity for some sort of synthesis. I really like what you said there.
I think, with the exception of Nancy, I think most of you are too young to remember Mad Magazine. But Mad Magazine was mad. I mean, it was crazy, but it was hilariously funny. And Alfred E. Newman was the was the hero of Mad Magazine. He looked exactly like Pete Buttigieg, as a matter of fact. and you know, his motto was "What me worry," and you know, for my generation, I think we accepted that everybody was a bit mad because of that, right? We're all a bit mad in some way.
Could I ask a question
Sure.
for Nick?
Please,
Nick,
finally.
Hi. I'm wondering what writers or other people might have been influential in your arriving at this particular place in September.
Well, to answer that, I'm interested in a lot of things, and I have quite a voracious appetite for all manner of like science, spirituality, psychedelic stuff, some philosophy. Yeah, so really the whole 9 yards. Especially in my especially in my 20s and early 30s. But at that time when that letter thing happened, right? I kind of left a lot of it behind, but I was very into not into at that time. I was into at that time, sorry, but I had always been into, but he made a resurgence and comeback in my life, Carlos Castaneda, and it was only him. And like I said, there's a lot more stuff that isn't in that story. Like, for example, one of them is that I was reading a book on him, and I saw my friend's name mentioned, and my friend is his dad is Sterling Silliphant, this Oscar-winning producer, right, whose lifelong ambition was to unrealized lifelong ambition was to do a film of Carlos Castaneda's first book, The Teachings of Don Juan. And I had a synchronicity with that friend just before the guy knocked on the door. And that friend, who was Sterling, his name is also Sterling, who was going to come and visit me in Melbourne. When we got that synchronicity, I was reading an article on his dad. And then I reached and it happened to be an obituary. Then I felt something about the date. So I looked on top and it said April 26th. It was the same date. So I said to Sterling, hey, do you know, I said to him later on, do you know, so he didn't know that. And the next day was Carlos Castaneda's death anniversary, April 27th. And there's even more weird stuff. But anyway, so Nancy, to answer your question, yes, so much different stuff. I really have quite a voracious appetite. I wouldn't know where to start describing.
Yeah. Sandy says she has to leave now. So Sandy, do you have any final thought before you go?
Nope, no, I don't. Thank you so much. I hope that you enjoyed telling your story, Nick.
Yes.
Yep, thanks for listening.
And thank you for being here, Nancy or Sandy. I'm sorry if you thought I was trying to shush you. I just wanted to, I don't know. So sometimes I get a little uncomfortable when we get it too much into trying to diagnose one another, and
it's all good.
Well, I could really debate that, but I'm just not going to do it, and I don't have the energy right now. Right, but
okay. Well, let's you and I do it. Maybe we should do it. That
sounds good. Right. Okay.
Okay.
Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.
So Nick, I'm wondering if all the reading you've done and experience culminated in that September experience. If
I wouldn't.
you
I
were
wouldn't say-
changing all the way along, and then there was the moment when you crossed this line.
I would say that the things that I've been influenced by, which are very many and varied, definitely had their part to play in shaping my mind, my experience, exposing me to things and stuff like that. But what happened in September, which was spontaneous actually, it was spontaneous. What it revealed to me is the thing that is formless behind that I cannot attribute to it was because of this influence or that influence. In fact, what happened was I saw how I was made up of all my influences and how different influences, whether the books that I read, the ideas that I'm into, the experiences that I've had, the people that I've met, how I am made up of all of them, yet not. So sorry if that sounds paradoxical, but it's like that. It's like I see the line of causality. It's kind of like before this experience, I had the idea that certain experiences were more fundamental than others and more defining than others. And after this experience, though that view doesn't change, but I find that, I go back further and further and further and further until it's like that Zen saying where it's like the face that you had before your parents were born. Yeah. So, yeah.
I saw a Jung quote today, something about, I'm sorry, I don't have it exactly, but something like, you have to accept your destiny, right? Sort of like accepting fate. You have to accept your destiny. And, I think that, many people come to your age in life, around 40, between 35 and 45. And some, analysts call it, or not analysts necessarily, but psychotherapists call it a midlife crisis. I'm sure it is a crisis for some people, because they lose their bearings, right? They build up their life. Oh, excuse me. It could easily be like a military man, right, who spends 30 years in the Navy, graduates from the Naval Academy at 21, and at 45, he's the captain of a aircraft carrier, and at 50, he's retiring from the Navy. Okay, and he's 50 years old. He's still got half of his life left, but suddenly he doesn't have 5,000 men that are dependent upon his decisions, right? And so then you say, okay, what are you going to do now, right? And a lot of people, I know a lot of military guys especially, who basically lost it. I mean, they can't get it going again after that, because their total center of their being is entirely in the one thing, and so they can't, they're still in the ocean. I was saying to Jackie Salomon today when I was organizing for her talk, I was saying it's like you're in the ocean and you're doggy paddling as much as you can to stay afloat, and eventually, but it's an ocean of milk, and gradually you make it into butter, and then you can rise up out of the ocean, right? And So it seems to me that you've come through this experience with your head on your shoulders. That's a good thing. I mean, I've been very impressed by you every time I've interacted with you, and
so imagine this: you were interacting with someone who was going through crazy stuff. I didn't seem that crazy, right?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
I really have this thing whenever you are you are saying your experience is crazy and weird. I'm like, no. The vocabulary we got to check in. Seriously, like, because I have like zero doubt that it's not crazy and weird. I don't intend to correct you anyway.
No, yes, Kushbu, but we can't say that. We can't go around saying that we actually think it's everyone else who's crazy, right?
Well, they all are. Yeah, they are. But I think, you know, one of the reasons that I'm interested in going on with this type of a conversation is because of YouTube, and because young people very often don't get to interact with others, and what I think that we can see is that, you know, everybody's life goes on the rocks. Okay, in the end, I mean, the story of Titanic is a metaphor for all life, actually. You know, we get on the ship of life, and some of us ride first class and some steerage, but we're all going to the same destination. And sooner or later, everybody's life ends up hitting an iceberg. And, you know, and then what? Can you make it to the lifeboat or not? And so it's important to know what supports you in your loneliness. Okay, we're all lonely. Okay, we all die alone. Everybody dies alone in the end. And so when we talk about the spiritual, I mean, this is spiritual. You know, the last 3 hours have been spiritual. And so in the end, you know, what's going to be there for you? You know, okay, it may be a religious faith or belief or what have you, depending on how your life has gone. But, you know, and I'm sorry, I'm not bored by what you've said. It's just
it's already pretty late, man. It's late for you guys.
Yeah, it's 12:30 at night. So for me, anyway. So, but, you know, in the end, can you say that you did something, that you made a difference in people's lives, whoever it is, and whatever it is? You know, what was the tile in the great mosaic of life that you put in there, right? Or more than one tile, maybe. You know, this is a tile. Many people will hear this conversation, and you know, it will make a difference to some people's lives, and you never know what that difference can be. So I'm, you know, I just wanted to mention to you 2 books that we've talked about recently. One of them is this one, Sacred Chaos.
Yes, I've read a bit of that from the
From the
Dropbox.
Dropbox. Okay, good. It's a good book. And what's the other one I was thinking about? Well, I know. Because you were talking about shamanism, the reason I pulled out Sacred Chaos is because it has a chapter on shamanism, which is interesting. And the other book that has an interesting chapter about it is Trauma in the Soul, which I've mentioned quite a few times. You know, when we were talking about if you see the Buddha coming, kill him, you know, if you know, a shaman can heal, you know, only when he doesn't have to heal, right? When you don't have to bring him a pile of money before he'll talk to you, type of thing, right? He can only heal when it's free, kind of thing. I mean, I'm not saying that that's always true, but you know, even pastors and so on, I mean, they take donations, but they don't specify that you have to pay X amount of money to go to church, right? So I mean, I don't know if that's meaningful to you, but
yeah. I mean,
may I say something I'm thinking about?
Yeah, please.
Thank you, Nick, for sharing. I have contemplated about the separation between genius and insanity, and my conclusions, without discussing the premises, was my conclusions are genius usually involves ending up being constructive, and insanity is destructive. So the stage in life you have arrived at, from your conversations in previous talks, it shows you have enormous clarity of understanding. When you talk to others or you grasp material, you have great clarity of understanding. Now you discussed your relationship with your mother. It has a lot of peace, and peace, clarity, understanding, and also like constructive. Your life is very constructive. So this is just in Bible, the Messiah Jesus Christ says that from the fruits you shall know them. So it's bearing you good fruits. And one meaning of gospel is good news. So the good news for you is like your life is unfolding very peacefully. You're aware of not just the relative things where you compare yourself with others in terms of numbers or percentages, but also you're aware of the absolutes, things that don't change through time. The peace you experience in your relationship with your mother and many other human beings, and the clarity. So just these are my observances, and you can take pride in them and feel satisfied and satiated that you're in a good place.
Thanks, Ed. I appreciate that. I mean, that's very, I want to think of a better word than nice, but you get my idea.
Yeah.
It's very, very erudite.
Yeah, that was a very thoughtful comment,
thanks a lot.
Idris. That
You're
was
welcome.
very nice.
Thank you.
So,
and if I don't talk to you again today, for everyone, have a good night.
Oh,
I really enjoyed
Okay.
the talk. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think it's time to pull in our oars here, but thank you, Nick. It's been a fascinating conversation, and I really appreciate your thoughtfulness in talking to us tonight. And
I hope I wasn't too broken up, but
no, it was very good. But it's great to get to know you now. I mean, we would have been in Switzerland together, but for this virus, and I would have gotten to know you better there. but on the trip that we didn't get to do. But I hope we get to make that trip together sometime as well. So Khushbu, can you bless us?
Yes, I'll ask the universe to bless us all.
Please.
Well, Nick, you are a wonderful human being. It's lovely knowing you. Really,
Thanks.
I mean it. I mean it from bottom of my heart. All right. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka
Samasa Sukhino Bhavantu.
Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Shanti, shanti, shanti. God bless you, everybody.
Bless you. So Nick, this is exactly what you were talking about.
Sorry, what's that?
This mantra of Khushbu's, even though only Khushbu really maybe understands the meaning in a specific way, but something is transferred among all of us through the listening to a spiritual mantra like that. And it works very powerfully on me because I know what I'm listening for isn't in the conscious mind, it's in the heart. And you know what it is that it does for me or for us, I can't say, but I mean, we could probably talk for 3 hours only on that.
I just wanna say that I know this mantra from my childhood, but very recently I realized that in this mantra, word for world, like world and an individual is the same. Lok is it is also like world. It's like Prithvi Lok, Swarg Lok, it's heaven world, Patal Lok is hell world. So, and Lok, it means individual. So a planet and an individual is the same thing. So actually here, if in terms of this mantra, different planets are interacting together.
Yeah.
So it's quite profound. I never knew it. This is 30th year of my life when I realized that I might have known this mantra for like some 25 years. So yeah, it's quite cool.
Yeah, it's quite cool. And we'll sneak in at the end of this session to just say that you know, Dr. Young observed late in his career that God equals the unconscious, and you know, you have a God within you that pushes you. That's your personal God, but then the unconscious of all humanity is being affected in a very special way that is quite mysterious, and we don't know how we're going to come out of it. But it, you know, nobody's going to be the same after the end of this coronavirus period. Nobody will be the same, and you know, that's God's will. We don't know what.
Quite staggering. Go ahead.
And I have been listening to a few people who call themselves shaman, and I kind of like resonate with what they are saying. Is that let's say a woman is in labor, so that is what is happening to the earth. Like it's in the labor, it's going to be painful, it's going to be messy, it's going to be bloody, like there will be shouting, there will be like life at risk, but after that, of course, everything going to change, because it is going to be around the child which is going to be born. So
that's the divine child that Jung spoke of.
Yeah,
very much so.
Well, there are some things that are really some things that are really quite profound and staggering. You know, just the number of big aircraft that are grounded, 14,000 large aircraft, and you know, many of those are worth $100 million each. But this morning we had some really nice sunny skies and big white fluffy clouds, and the blue of the sky just seems to be more like what I remember as a kid. I think the air quality is crisper and clearer. I don't know, maybe I'm projecting into that, but
no, it definitely is true.
Definitely, even me.
No, that's not projection.
Okay, good to hear. And then the robins, I was thinking, oh, I don't really see the robins. Robin is a pretty big bird, and it's got a red chest. And as a kid, I remember seeing lots of robins. But this year, yeah, we've been seeing a lot more robins. Again, I don't know, you know. So there's some nice things about this situation, as much as it is terrible for so many people.
Yeah. So Nick, thank you again. It's been
thank you, Nick.
Very interesting evening. And we'll be
thank you, Khushbu,
tomorrow we're doing Ed Gray tomorrow. That's Tim's psychotherapist at 1 p.m. Eastern time. So 11 for Miles, 10:30 at night for Khushbu, and probably not possible for Nick. That'd be 1 a.m. for you. I'm sorry.
I'll see. Okay.
But
I thought Sir Tim is gonna speak about him today, like tomorrow.
He's gonna do it next Saturday, this time next week. That's what we agreed at the beginning, that Ed Gray is gonna have tomorrow, and then Tim, you know, I want Tim to tell the story publicly as he wishes to tell it, that he told us in the advanced group, because that's a private video, and he was quite raw coming out of that experience. But I'd like him to tell it for a public audience, and also to talk about any reflections that he had about it subsequently in this last 8 weeks, because actually this group and this process that we're doing is a direct result of that, because it was his idea coming out of that we should do something like this. So anyway, I'm looking forward to that, his comments on that. So anyway, peace. Thank you.
Peace, everybody.
Bye.
Everybody.
Bye,
Bye
Nick.
bye.
Bye, Coach Boo.
Bye. Bye,
Bye.
Miles. Bye, Chris.